Hey guys, how's it going? Srey here, and I am back today with another How Good Is video. Today is going to be featuring Arthas. So, how good is Arthas? Well, turns out he's pretty good, as you probably already knew. He's one of the premier tanks in the game, and although I say tank, he's better in an off-tank slash bruiser role, although he can still be played as a solo tank. His main advantage as a bruiser is having sustained damage and sustained healing. He can be played in a variety of comps with on a variety of different maps, and let's cover his basic abilities first. So, Death Coil is his first ability on a 9-second cooldown. It deals damage to the target enemy and can be self-cast to heal even more. So, casting on an enemy just looks like this. Nothing too fancy, just a point and click DPS ability. I'm going to take some damage here. You can see that I can cast Death Coil on myself. So if I click it, cast it on myself, it will heal me for a little bit more than it damages. You can also self-cast this ability, as you can self-cast pretty much every ability in the game. And what this means is that if you hold the Alt key on your keyboard, and then you just press Q, you can see that my mouse is over here, it will heal me. You can also do this with abilities like Howling Blast, which roots enemies within the target area for 1.25 seconds and also deals damage. So if I self-cast this by holding Alt and pressing W, I can cast it directly underneath me. But generally you don't want to cast it underneath yourself, and you can cast it wherever you point and click. So this will just root enemies in the area. This roots all enemies, including merc camps or minions or whatever else. Generally you want to target it on enemy heroes. It would just look like that. His E is his most impactful ability. It is called the Frozen Tempest. It costs 15 mana per second, and it is a channeled ability, which means that once you activate it, it will permanently stay active until you either run out of mana or you deactivate it. It deals damage per second to nearby enemies, and it slows their attack speed and movement speed by 10% per second, stacking up to 40%. Notice that it says enemies, so this works on mercenaries, although it definitely doesn't work on bosses, but it will work on pretty much everything else, including minions in the wave, although that usually isn't important whatsoever. So after 4 seconds, you will slow their attack speed and movement speed by 40%, and activating it just looks like this. You can see here that it will last until I cancel the ability. His final ability is Frostborn Hungers. It is a 12-second cooldown, and you activate it to make Arthas' next basic attack strike immediately and deal increased damage, and also restore 30 mana. So you can see here, these are normal attacks, and when I activate D, it will deal increased damage and also restore some mana. Note that it strikes immediately, so this counts as an auto attack reset. An auto attack reset just means, again, if you're watching my attacks here, standard attacks, and then if I immediately cast D after an attack, you'll be able to attack a little bit faster, get a little bit more burst damage, and although it doesn't seem like a lot, it will definitely help you sometimes. So in general, the playstyle of Arthas is, first of all, you might notice that he has no mobility whatsoever in his kit. He has some mobility at level 20, but it is not a very good talent, so you wouldn't take that talent. So essentially, he has no mobility, and what you're going to be doing is just running into the enemy team and popping Frozen Tempest and just attacking whatever you can. So these are all heroes. You just step in the middle of their team, and you'll be able to attack them. He has pretty good trading potential, especially with melee heroes, or if you can get within range of ranged heroes, and if they don't have any mobility spells, so for example, Li Ming does have mobility with her blink, she can blink out, Zeratul has mobility. If they do have mobility spells, then they'll be able to get out of Frozen Tempest, and Frozen Tempest again is probably his most impactful ability. Frozen Tempest, the attack speed slow, lets you trade very, very well with a variety of heroes, very good against Illidan, and is actually very good against Cassia as well. So because if you don't have a mobility spell, you cannot get out of Frozen Tempest, and you can't reset the passive effect, which is the attack speed slow or the movement speed slow. This even works on heroes like Lily, who, although she has 10% increased movement speed, it's not nearly enough to run away from Arthas. Although the ability doesn't say how long the slow lasts, if I walk up to this target dummy, you can see that the slow effect is the little circle thing, the little purple circle. If I walk away from that, you can see that it lasts a moment after I exit. And I think that's about 1 second, maybe 1.25. It's between 1 and 1.5 seconds. I haven't measured it exactly, but there's a slight effect after you leave. So if you're on a hero and they momentarily get out and then you go back in, it will still continue applying the slow. Okay, let's go over talents. So Eternal Hunger is his first talent, and every time you hit an enemy hero with Frostmourne Hungers, you increase the mana restored by 4 up to a maximum of 40, and you increase the damage by 4. Note that the damage permanently stack or will indefinitely stack, whereas the mana caps at 40. So you can stack it way more times than 10 times if you want to increase the damage. Frozen Tempest is another quest talent, and every time you root an enemy with Howling Blast, or an enemy hero rather, you gain effects. So after rooting 5 heroes, Howling Blast cooldown is reduced by 2 seconds, so from 10 to 8. After rooting 10 heroes, Howling Blast range is increased by 30%, and after rooting 20 heroes, Howling Blast also roots enemies in its path. Rime is basically block, and every 5 seconds you gain a stack of 60 physical armor that reduces the damage of the next heroic basic attack by 60%. You can store up to 3 charges. So 60 might seem like an odd number, but Arthas actually has 10 physical armor, and he used to have 15 physical armor. And because armor does not stack past 75%, it's going to stack up to, if the previous physical armor would stack to 15, or it would be 15, and Rime would give you 60, so that gives you 75, so it wouldn't stack past that. And that's the normal stack of block. So 60 plus 15 is 75, which the normal talent block reduces. So this is essentially a block, but has 3 charges, making it slightly better. So at level 1, you're going to go Rime if they have heavy auto attack heroes. Heavy does not mean high DPS, it just means they attack slow and they attack hard. So obviously you're going to get no effect in this if you're against a Tracer or a Tassadar or any kind of hero that attacks quickly. Doesn't benefit you at all because it uses all the charges very quickly. But if you're against a hero like Ragnaros or Zeratul, who attack fairly slowly, especially if they have auto attack buffs, like Zeratul's follow through or whatever it's called at level 4, it's not called follow through anymore, I don't think. That's essentially going to reduce a significant amount of damage via armor. The other option you have is Frost Presence, and this is what you could go most of the time. So again, if they don't have auto attack heroes, you can just go Frost Presence. But even if they do, you might want to go Frost Presence anyway, especially if you have a lot of CC in your team. So if you have a CC comp and you're trying to open on a target with Howling Blast to have your team follow up on that, I'm going to go Frost Presence. And I will take the quest here to show you what it looks like. So if I complete the quest, actually let me do this again here. So the normal Frost Howling Blast radius is about this far. And if I complete the quest,
choose a talent.
Maybe about this far. So 30% looks like that. And you get a 2-second cooldown reduction, which is nice as well. And the more important upgrade when you hit 20 heroes is that it roots all enemies in the path. So this effect here, when it goes through, will actually root enemies. So you can see that the target dummy is still rooted, even though I haven't directly clicked on them. So if I toggle minions here, and I root behind the minions, it will hit all the minions. So this just means that you want to, sorry, I'm just going to toggle some stuff off. If there are enemy heroes directly in front of you and there are enemy heroes at the back, but you want to root the enemy hero in front, you would root at the back so that the enemy heroes are hit at the front anyway, but you can also root the enemies at the back. So this makes it easier to hit, and sometimes you will gain a lot of effectiveness by hitting pretty much their whole team. I would never recommend going Eternal Hunger unless you go with a specific build. So once we get level 7, I will talk about the different builds. For now, I'm just going to talk about the talents. Frozen Wastes is level 4 talent, and it reduces the cost of Frozen Tempest per second by 4, so from 15 to 11, almost 30%, about 30%. And every time you damage an enemy hero with Frozen Tempest, once you damage 150 heroes with Frozen Tempest, once you damage a hero 150 times the Frozen Tempest, the movement speed and attack speed slows of Frozen Tempest lasts an additional 1.5 seconds versus heroes. So one thing I forgot to mention is that Frozen Tempest does not hit once per second. You can see that it deals 80 damage per second, but it actually deals 44 damage every 0.5 seconds. So it hits twice per second. So what this means is that you would only need to stand next to a hero for 75 seconds. Additionally, you can stack it off of multiple heroes at the same time. So if you're surrounded by 3 heroes, it's going to stack 3 times as quickly. So it doesn't actually take that long to stack this talent, especially if they have a lot of melee. Icy Talons, you gain 3% attack speed for 1.5 seconds every time a hero is damaged by a Frozen Tempest to a maximum of 60%. So what this means is that if you're attacking a single hero for 10 seconds, you'll gain 60% attack speed. If there are two heroes within Frozen Tempest, for 5 seconds, that'll give you the attack speed. And if there are 5 heroes around you, you only need to stand there for 2 seconds and you'll have 60% attack speed. Deathlord reduces the cooldown of Death Coil by 3 seconds and increases its range by 30%. So just to show you the 30% increase, this is normal, and this is with the talent. Actually, I should probably stand back a bit. So it's a little bit further, 30% further to be exact. So at level 4, let me go to the level 7 talents, and then I'll talk about the level 4 talents, because they are very important to match together. Rune Tap, every third basic attack against a target, not a single target, so every third basic attack heals Arthas for 4% of his max health, so you don't have to attack the same target. You can see that if I take this talent here, it gives you a little bar, and you need to do 3 attacks. So if I just walk away and I hit another target, the next auto attack will heal me. It didn't heal me because I'm full health, but the next auto attack would heal me. So it just gives you a little bit of an indicator there. The other talents we have are Immortal Coil. Gain the healing effect of Death Coil even when used on enemies. If Death Coil is used on Arthas, it heals him for an additional 50% bonus healing. And Icebound Fortitude, it has a 35-second cooldown. It's activatable, and you activate it to gain 25 armor, reducing damage taken by 25%. And reduce the duration of stuns, slows, and roots against Arthas by 75% for 3 seconds. Okay, so the reason I didn't talk about the level 4 talents here is that whatever talent you take at 4 corresponds to the talent you take at 7. So let's talk about the 7 talents first. Icebound Fortitude is absolutely necessary against any team that has heavy CC, especially in more coordinated play where teams will definitely use will definitely coordinate their CC very effectively. So notice that this doesn't prevent the duration of polymorphs, taunts, or silences. Most notably is the silence. The big weakness to Arthas is that he doesn't have any kind of burst healing. Although Death Coil does heal you, it doesn't heal you that much. And his main source of healing is going to be level 10, and that's over a duration. So if you get bursted, or if you get CC locked, you will pretty much die if you are targeted by any damage. So Icebound Fortitude, again, absolutely necessary against any CC kind of oriented comp, especially the higher level that you play at. And the other options we have are Rune Tap, which is good if you need sustained healing, or if they don't have a lot of CC, you essentially go Rune Tap. And then Immortal Coil is good in a poke oriented build. So let's talk about the level 4s now. So if you go Icebound Fortitude, you always want to go Frozen Wastes. If you go Rune Tap, you want to go Icy Talons. So you can see that a increase in attack speed means that you gain more healing because you can attack faster, which heals you more often. And Deathlord, which would be better for a poke-oriented build because it increases the range and reduces the cooldown, which means you get more pokes off for Mortal Coil. So if they don't have CC, go Icy Talons, and then go Rune Tap. If they have a lot of ranged heroes and you can't get to their team, go Deathlord, and then go to Mortal Coil. If they have a lot of CC, go Icebound Fortitude, and go Frozen Wastes. Most of the time, you're going to want, especially in competitive, you want to go Frozen Wastes and Icebound Fortitude. I say competitive, but I just mean in any kind of coordinated play. You can still go Rune Tap with Frozen Wastes without Icy Talons, but you're going to gain a little bit less effectiveness versus it. That pretty much covers the 7s and 4s. The only thing that worth mentioning here is that if you do go Icy Talons, you're going to be using a lot of mana because you need to have your E activated, and Frozen Wastes would reduce the amount of mana you need. So if you do go Icy Talons, maybe even Deathlord because you're using more Death Coils because the cooldown is lower, you might need more mana, and Eternal Hunger will help you with that mana significantly. I wouldn't take this in coordinated play, but I definitely find a use for it in Pure League. If you never need to back because of mana, because this gives you an insane amount of mana, it more than doubles the amount of mana you gain from Frostborn Hungers. It's not very hard to stack at all either. If you never need to back due to mana, and you have sustain from either Rune Tap or Death Coil, you never need to back, which means you have infinite sustain. You never have to back. Well Tap will be good enough for healing from your allies, and being on the map more often is easier to carry in Hero League. Level 10, we have two heroics. We have Army of the Dead, and we have Summon Sindragosa. Army of the Dead costs 80 mana, 80-second cooldown, and you summon ghouls that last 15 seconds, and you can sacrifice these ghouls to heal you for 585 health, or whatever amount of health you are at, whatever level you are. The other heroic we have is Summon Sindragosa. Costs 100 mana, 100 seconds, 80 mana, 80 seconds, 100 mana, 100 seconds, I Sense a Conspiracy. And it basically summons Sindragosa, who will fly over and deal damage and slow enemies by 60% for 3.5 seconds. In addition, it also slows non-heroic enemies and structures, or disables rather, for 20 seconds. So let's cover Army of the Dead first. And when I activate it, it's going to summon a bunch of ghouls. You can see that it summons 6 ghouls. So it's basically heals a little bit more than, it's a little bit more or less, a little bit more than Death Coil. And the ghouls will disappear after 15 seconds. The ghouls can also be used to attack targets. So if I summon them here, and I attack this target dummy, they will attack that. And if I attack this, they should attack this. Actually, no, they attack whatever target you hit, I believe. Or prioritizes heroes. I don't actually remember. But they will do more DPS per second. All right, that doesn't make sense. They'll deal more DPS than your auto attacks would deal. So if you look at your character stats here, he attacks 1 time per second for 208, so you have 208 DPS. And if you summon the ghouls here, the ghouls by themselves at level 20, if they actually all attack here, there we go, will deal about 250 or so DPS. So they actually deal quite a noticeable amount of damage. The other thing that's interesting to note is because the ghouls are basically little mini units, they will block any kind of skill shots like Li Ming or Kill Fast Stun or whatever else skill shot you might be sending your way. So, and the other use you can use is they tank towers very effectively. You see here that they're being targeted. I'm not sure if it's just because the towers just don't do a lot of damage at level 20, or they just have damage reduction. They have 50% reduction versus non-heroic sources or what. But they're pretty good at tanking structures, so you don't need Sindragosa just to tank structures. You can also just use Army of the Dead, especially since it's a lower cooldown. This allows you to dive structures very effectively. Note that the ghouls can be killed by enemies, but it is usually not too common since they do have a fair amount of health. So I'm just going to take a bit of damage here so you can actually see the ghouls healing. Okay. And I just activate, I'm going to toggle cooldowns here, and activate it, and you can only use this once every 2 seconds, so you can't just use them all at once. And they're just absorbed and killed as you activate the ability. The other thing I want you to note is that the ghoul with the lowest amount of health is the one that will be killed. That means that, well, that's a good thing for Arthas, and it means that you'll be able to use them as effectively as possible. So the lowest health ghoul is the one that will be killed next. The other heroic, again, is Summon Sindragosa. So Summon Sindragosa looks like this. You can see that the range is very, very far. If I cast it on these structures, it will deal damage to them and then disable them for 20 seconds. So you can see here that they are permanently frozen, and the well, by the way, cannot be used while it is Sindragosa. Something else I want to note is Ragnaros can still use Molten Core on this fort, okay? It will not remove the effect of the frozen building, so if he dies before 20 seconds are over, the effect will still be there, but he can use his Molten Core and it will be just as effective as it would be otherwise. So Sindragosa is very strong in general, but most of the time you want to go Army of the Dead. The slow effect of Sindragosa is the more effective part of Sindragosa in general. 60% slow for 3.5 seconds is a lot. The disabling of structures is good and will help you snowball games if you're on Battlefield of Eternity, pushing with Immortal, or Brax's Holdout, pushing with the Zerg, if you're on Dragonshire, pushing with the Dragon Knight, and so on. It can definitely help you snowball the game, especially if you already have like a level lead or something. You might be able to just end the game by getting this talent and pushing with it. But most of the time, you should be going Army of the Dead. The only time I'd recommend going Summon Sindragosa is if A, you absolutely cannot get in their enemy team, or B, you are in a doubles tank scenario and you're diving them very hard. In all other cases, I would recommend Army of the Dead. If you're going solo tank Arthas, I would pretty much always recommend going Army of the Dead. The sustain is extremely necessary to keep you alive, unless you have something like Medivh or Tassadar or Double Healer. But even in those cases, Army of the Dead is still going to be more effective the vast majority of the time. So Summon Sindragosa is niche, and Army of the Dead is basically necessary. Level 13, we have Shattered Armor. Enemy heroes hit by Howling Blast have their armor reduced by 15 for 4 seconds. Frost Strike reduces the cooldown of Frostborn Hungers by 2 seconds, so from 12 to 10. And Frostborn Hungers also slows enemies by 50% for 1.5 seconds. Biting Cold, each second an enemy is damaged by Frozen Tempest, it deals 12.5% bonus damage up to 50% bonus damage. So that means that after 4 seconds, it will deal 50% bonus damage. And let's go over the viability. So Biting Cold is what you should be getting most of the time, the vast majority of the time at level 13. It's just going to give you the most viability here at this tier. These talents all pretty much suck, to be fair. Frost Strike is pretty much just bad. A 2-second cooldown at level 13 D is not nearly good enough. So it's the slow effect that we're looking at. When you're already slowing enemies by 40%, a 50% slow doesn't really do that much. So even if you go the detailing here at level 1, it's still not going to be good at level 13. Shattered Armor is very good if you are in a burst-oriented comp. Note that normal vulnerability will remove 25 armor for 2 seconds. This reduces 15 armor for 4 seconds. So it is quite good. And if you went Frost Presence, this is going to give you a lot more benefit as well. If you are even thinking about going Shattered Armor at 13, I would definitely recommend going Frost Presence at 1. Not only does the increased range help, but the cooldown reduction helps, and hitting all heroes in your path will help as well. So I think this is a pretty underrated talent. I see Biting Cold going almost exclusively, and although I said you should be getting it the majority of the time, I still think that Shattered Armor is a very good talent that should be taken more than I've seen it being taken as it is currently.
Choose a talent.
Level 16, we have Remorseless Winter. Frostborn Feeds and Embrace Death. Remorseless Winter. Enemy heroes that remain within Frozen Tempest for 3 seconds are rooted for 1.25 seconds. This effect can only happen once every 10 seconds. Frostborn Feeds increases the amount of basic attacks empowered by Frostborn Hungers to 2 from 1. And Embrace Death. Death Coil deals more damage and heals more the lower Arthas' current health is to a maximum of 100% bonus damage and healing. So Frostborn Feeds, sorry, sucks. Let's not even talk about that. An extra basic attack or extra Frostborn Hungers is not really going to do anything. Even if you went, again, Eternal Hunger at level 1, not very effective here at all. The only time I'd even remotely consider taking it is, I would never take that talent in competitive, and if I'm in Hero League and I went Eternal Hunger and I somehow got a lot of stacks, and I didn't go Q build, and I'm not going to really benefit from Remorseless Winter for whatever reason, I might consider taking this talent, but in all other scenarios, I would never recommend taking this talent. And I would definitely not take this talent if you didn't get Eternal Hunger. Embrace Death is what you take here at level 16 if you went Q build. So I wouldn't generally go Q build, but if you did happen to go Death Lord and Immortal Coil, this is obviously the talent you're going to take at 16. It is pretty good with those talents, but otherwise it is garbage. So the way this works is that if you are at 50% health, you're going to do 50% bonus damage and healing. And if you're at 1% health, you're going to deal 99% bonus damage and healing. And if you're at 0% health, you're going to be dead. So the way this does not work, though, is it does not stack with Immortal Coils, 50% additional healing for yourself. So it does not, it's additive, it's not multiplicative. And yeah, so when you Q a target, it's basically going to do, let's say you're at 30% health, it's going to do 70% more damage to the target, and it's going to heal you for 70% more. So you can get a lot of effectiveness out of this 16 talent if you went those Q talents. But by and large, you're going to be going Remorseless Winter, which although it's not exactly game changing most of the time, it is pretty good. And although it's only once every 10 seconds and it takes 3 seconds for it to actually work, so if I actually use it here, it works like this. After 3 seconds, they'll get rooted. And it pretty much just looks like that. It's only 1.25 seconds, but then again, Howling Blast is only 1.25 seconds and it's a free root. It's going to double your rooting effectiveness, insane value. Not really, but kind of. And I would recommend going this most of the time. Note that if you go Frozen Wastes, I do believe it will be a lot easier to stack Morris's Winter because they need to have a total of 3 seconds without it wearing off. So even if they run outside of Frozen Tempest for a moment, as long as they're still affected by the slow, it will reapply. The effect will still the root will still apply if they run back into Frozen Tempest. Hope that makes sense. And at level 20, we have good talents for the most part. Let's start with Death's Advance and Anti-Magic Shell. So Death's Advance is not good. It is a 50-second cooldown, and you can activate to increase your movement speed by 30% for 3 seconds. And you passively increase your movement speed by 10%. So this means that if you activate it, you'll have a total of 40% movement speed for 3 seconds before going back to 10% movement speed. So although movement speed is pretty OP with Arthas, I would not recommend this talent because there are simply better options, and in comparison to those options, this talent is pretty much trash. I would never recommend going this talent. Anti-Magic Shell is a 60-second cooldown, and you activate it to make Arthas immune to spell damage for 3 seconds. And any damage, or 25% of the damage prevented, will also heal you. So this is obviously going to be good for heavy spellcaster comps. So if they have double mage for whatever reason, you can take this talent and you will reduce a lot. You will prevent all of the damage in the burst, and you will heal for 25% of the amount. Note that this does not work against percent health. So if Leo Drain hopes you, you will not reduce any of that damage. That damage is percentage, and it does not get reduced by Anti-Magic Shell. The ability itself just looks like this. Ooh, spooky. And then something I didn't mention as well, I wanted to talk about really quickly, is Icebound Fortitude.
Choose a talent. Choose a talent.
And Icebound Fortitude, when you activate it, or when you take the talent, it just appears in your bar, and when you activate it, you just become kind of frozen white for 3 seconds before it disappears. Okay, so level 20s, we covered these two, and the other ones are Legion of Northrend. 3 additional ghouls are created. Ghouls heal for an additional 50% and last for 5 seconds. And Absolute Zero. Sindragosa flies twice as far. Enemy heroes are rooted for 2 seconds and then slowed by 60% for 3.5 seconds. So Absolute Zero is very strong. The flying twice as far part isn't that great. Let me actually move all the way over here. So you can see normal range on Sindragosa is pretty far. So yeah, twice as far. I probably won't even be able to show it on the screen. Oh, I can. It's very, very far. Sindragosa is just gonna fly, 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 and does the same thing but twice as far. The other thing to note here, of course, is that it roots enemies, or enemy heroes rather, for 2 seconds and then slows by 3.5. So this doesn't work where 2 of the seconds of the root, or of the slow rather, are used by the root. It's still just an additional 2. It's an additional 2 seconds of root, and then you have the 3.5 seconds of slow. So just to give you a sense of how long that actually is, if I cast in this target dummy, we have the 2 seconds of root, then we have the 3.5 seconds of slow. That is a very, very, very long CC in a team fight. And a 60% slow is still really, really strong, even if they aren't rooted. So if you went the Sindragosa, I would definitely be going Absolute Zero. And in a similar context, if you go Army of the Dead, I would definitely recommend going Legion of Northrend, because not only does it create 3 additional ghouls, which, gives you more damage, it's going to absorb some more, and you can use them. You have 3 more ghouls to heal from. They also heal for an additional 50%, which is a very large increase, and they last 5 seconds longer. So this is going to give you a ton of value, and is by and large what you should be taking most of the time when you're playing Arthas, since you'll be going Army of the Dead most of the time. Very effective level 20 talent. So if you go Army of the Dead, go Legion of the Northrend, and if you go Sindragosa, go Absolute Zero. I would pretty much always go Absolute Zero no matter what. If you go Sindragosa, I would never even consider going Anti-Magic Shell. But if you go Army of the Dead, and they have a lot of burst, then you might want to go Anti-Magic Shell to reduce the ability damage. But I personally only taken this like a couple of games out of all the Arthas games I have, because it's just so situational. Usually they don't have like a Kael'thas, a Jaina, and a Tyrande. Like that never happens, because they'll probably just lose with 3 mages or 3 kind of abilities spellcasters. So that's pretty much everything I want to talk about with Arthas. Something to note is that Arthas works out really well with Lucio, because Lucio can speed him on heroes, and you can never escape a fast Arthas ever, and that can be pretty devastating. Any kind of movement speed heroes will also buff Arthas, Basically, what I'm saying is movement speed on Arthas is really good. I would recommend playing him in a double tank comp. He can work in solo tank, but he's definitely better in double tank or double support. Preferably double tank with another main tank. So even just like a Muradin plus an Arthas would be pretty good. Or even Zarya plus an Arthas. Remember that Zarya has an insane 50% increase in movement speed at level 4 now on her shield. So not only does Arthas live longer via the shield, but he also gains an insane amount of movement speed. That's pretty much all I want to talk about today. I hope this video helped you out, and I will talk to you guys next time. Thanks for watching.